How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about what you do.
Cool. So what I do is I'm active duty Navy. I've been in the Navy for about 11 years. I'm a submarine guy, and I also have a property management company. We
Okay.
manage pretty modest, maybe like 3 million assets under management. Nothing crazy. Um, but we decide that's all single family, and so it's relatively easy to get to that number when you're in Hawaii. So we actually don't really manage that many properties.
Right.
But just for our investments, just for our ROI, we decided that it didn't really make sense, my team and I, it didn't really make sense for us to purchase homes in Hawaii because the game in Hawaii is really appreciation. Cash flow is a little difficult unless you're doing some like exotic forms of real estate, maybe Airbnb, but in like certain districts because the maintenance fee might eat up your margins, or you can get a home out in the suburbs, but you probably have to rent it out like by room in order to get the price that you want. Um,
Yep.
so we decided to do multifamily, and multifamily is still in Hawaii is kind of crazy. I haven't seen a 4 unit for under $1 million. It's just not possible. I'm
Right.
sure it's possible, but lots of renovations to do. So we ended up in Washington. I'm a little bit familiar with Washington. We did some research. Washington's a good area. There's lots of good areas, lots of great areas, but Washington seemed pretty decent. And so we just wanted to start building our roots in Washington, getting to know the market a little bit better. Um,
Cool.
yeah, that's it. How about you?
I got my start in IT. I worked in I was a computer geek. I wrote regressive testing for Windows platform applications, and uh, I love data. I love huge chunks of data and figuring out how to take big chunks of data and make them meaningful, not just having pages and pages and pages of spreadsheets, but get the data to a point where it's useful. And I had an uncle who was plugged into the real estate world, and he made a ton of money and lived a great lifestyle. And I wanted that, and I was not living that lifestyle with where I was living. And so, um, with my career path, I figured I was going to die in my 40s of a massive heart attack if I kept doing what I was doing in IT. So Uncle Ron was doing real estate. I was going to figure out real estate, and that's where I started dabbling. 2001 to 2003. You're a young guy. You probably weren't even born about that time, uh, uh, but I got into real estate professionally in 2003, not because I wanted to hand out my card at the supermarket and say, "Hey, who do you know who wants to buy or sell this year?" Because I'm the hardest working realtor in the neighborhood. I wanted to figure out how to squeeze a buck out of this thing and figure out how to build long-term wealth and cash flow using rental properties. And my first iteration between 2003 and 2008, I chased equity growth, which is nothing new to you. If you're investing in Hawaii, you understand the
Right.
equity growth side. My problem was I got my clock cleaned in 2008 when the market collapsed, because not only did property values drop, but I had 10 properties, about 3.5 million worth of real estate, and rents dropped for about a year and a half, 2 years there. And when that happened, it left me with a $25,000 to $30,000 a month negative cash flow, uh, which I think the technical term sucked. Uh, it was less than ideal. And so to further complicate things, I had just gotten married. And a few months after getting married, we got the little, plus sign on the EPT, and life got more complicated. Simultaneous to my income dropping from 250 a year down to about 40 a year.
Mhm.
That also sucked. So I knew how to make money in real estate. I'd proven that I knew how to make money in real estate. I was doing something wrong, and I sharpened my pencil and said, okay, I'm really focused on equity growth. Let's look at the far other end of the spectrum over here at cash flow. And most investment models are going to be somewhere in the middle there, but I was real heavy on the equity growth side, which is what you see today with a lot of the flippers and a lot of the Burr guys and all this. They're like, well, I'm going to go buy something really cheap, and then I'm going to put all this value in, and I'm going to pull all my cash back out, and other people will pay for the whole thing. That was my model, and I lost millions of dollars doing that. So I started looking at the other end of the spectrum, which was cash flow. And I started analyzing properties that I liked that I would find online based on cash flow. And then I would look at appreciation. I would factor for depreciation, and we would account for debt reduction. And when I started doing that, the numbers were staggering. I mean, we were looking at north of 30% ROI in the first year alone. And I was like, okay, cool. And I started showing this to a lot of my tech geek clients. I was like, hey, what do you guys think about this? Let's pick apart this model. And I had folks start looking at this, and most IT guys will prove to you within the first minute or two, they're the smartest guy in the room.
Mhm.
And so they would start attacking the, excuse me, the numbers, and they liked it. So they would start buying these properties. And I had clients making a ton of money from 2011, 2012 up to 2015. And by that point, I'd gotten to a point where I was running my planning piece where I'd help people establish how much they wanted to build a portfolio to. And then I had a brokerage piece where I'd help them buy the property. And then I was running property management for them. And
Oh,
property management gave me the data that I needed to go back and look at their plan and see if they were making enough money. And if not, then we'd go back to brokerage and adjust their portfolio and back to property management. And then you get one of those proven repeatable business systems that you hear about from the Six Sigma guys and all that.
mhm.
And that worked out really well. So in 2015, I opened my own shop, and Blackwell Real Estate was born. And the rest has not been a Cinderella story, but it has been a story of grit and hustle. And I have built a company up to a multi-million-dollar company that's now in 4 different states, and we are in the process of growing nationwide. My mission is I want to help 1% of the U.S. population, or about 3.3 million people, break out of the rat race, and I want them to do it using rental properties. And so that's me in a box. That's where you're finding me at this stage on my journey. I've got an online workshop where I teach this, and we're scheduling live events. We're putting together some products right now to get people out of the, I'd like to figure this out, or that sounds like it would be fun to do someday, and say, great, I'm happy for you. Let's actually do it. And here's how. I have the whole model for you. I've got the properties. I have the systems. I have the implementation. Sign here, here, and here. We're going to make it happen for you right now. That's me.
Awesome. Does that model attack the problem at like the lowest price point? So, I mean, does it start off where they're definitely purchasing single family homes, or is there another version of that where they purchase multifamily or they get into commercial property early on?
I actually don't advise most folks to buy single family at this point.
Awesome.
At least in the Puget Sound, prices are too high. And when you run the data, okay, this is all based on data. I don't want you to take my opinion on it.
Mhm.
I will take a step back and say mine is not the only way to do it. Obviously, mine is not the only way to invest in real estate. It is the way I have learned to do this that works. And I've got 20 years of scars and painful, very expensive learning experiences to back up what we show now.
Mhm.
With single family properties, as you've learned, they're typically more of an equity growth play, where the model we used to talk about, okay, when I was in my 20s, I'm assuming you're in your 20s, you look like a young guy.
I'm 31,
You're,
but thank you.
you don't look it. uh, when I was in my early 20s, I was working with my peer group, right? And a lot of these folks were making $30,000, $40,000 a year. They were just starting their careers. And so I'd say, okay, you're going to buy a condo, and you're going to live in this condo for a year or two. And then you're going to move up to your starter home, and you're going to keep the condo and rent out the condo. And then after you're in your starter home for 2 or 3 years, then you're going to move up to your move up home, right? And somewhere in there, usually people get married and small people start to arrive and things like that. So life happens along the way. But the idea was you would buy your first property and then move up and keep the previous ones. And that was part of my failed plan. Is I had too many condominiums, and in addition to rents dropping and property values dropping, the condos got their clocks cleaned, right?
Mhm.
They were decimated. There were also special assessments that came out,
Oh,
and the risk of a homeowner association turned out to be something that I know people who have made money in condos,
mhm.
but it's not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of the condo model anymore.
Same.
The only condos I advise people to buy are if you're going to live in it, or
Mhm.
if you are going to own it as a rental property for, say, a vacation rental that you want to use predominantly. I've got a friend who owns a condo in Maui.
Oh,
Okay. And I keep telling him that he's going to sell me this condo in Maui because he keeps saying that he's going to sell it. I'm like, I'm your buyer.
right here.
But that's, yeah, that's a quality of life investment, right? It's not a financial investment.
Mhm.
And so single family homes, you can make money on equity growth with them, but most everything we advise people to look at now are small multifamilies, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes,
Mhm.
because you, the VA guy,
Mhm.
can buy a fourplex with nothing down.
Right.
I have two clients who bought a fourplex in the past year. They're brothers, Navy guy and a Marine guy. There's some jokes in the family about, military stuff,
Sure.
but you know, I like military guys. But they bought a fourplex, nothing down. They've made good money with it. They use their VA benefit, and now they're both going to go and free up their VA benefit by refinancing that, and they're each going to go and buy their own second fourplex.
Mhm.
And these young men are in their mid 20s, and by the time they're 30, they'll both be multimillionaires.
Yep.
So they're easy to get into, they're easy to get out of, they're easy to upgrade from. Um, as the investment world discovered fourplexes about 2.5, 3 years ago, it's driven up prices, and prices on fourplexes have doubled here in the Seattle market in the past 3 years. Now we're looking at other properties. The model does not require a specific asset type. The model requires the financials to work. And so I start with asking people how much money they want to make each month to live their lifestyle. I have thousands of examples. I've got hundreds of these conversations I have a year. And the number I hear most often is $10,000 a month.
Hmm.
Well, if 10,000 a month is your goal, then we work backwards. You put an equal sign there and you work backwards. A plus B plus C equals 10,000 a month. Now we just have to figure out what A is, what B is, and what C is. And then we have to figure out what the client's abilities are. How much cash do they have on hand? What are their financials in terms of income and liabilities? What do they qualify for? All that stuff, right? It's very custom tailored.
Mhm.
But A plus B plus C equals $10,000 a month. You build to your model on the gross, you get to your number, and then you stop. And you stop buying. And you let your tenants, who are really nice people, pay the whole thing off. And that leaves them with, in this case, a $10,000 a month portfolio that automatically adjusts for inflation because rents adjust for inflation. And with that $10,000 a month base, people are like, well, I want to get into Airbnb, or I want to go flip houses or whatever. I say, great, do that after you've got your stable foundation
Mhm.
of your 10 grand a month or whatever that number is, because
Right.
that frees up your time to go out and do whatever it is you want to do. Right.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. You had let it slip that you prepare about an hour before the call. Just curious, so, for a podcast like this. So I'm just curious. So what does the preparation entail for a call like this?
My world is very chaotic right now. Last
Mhm.
year, we broke my company into different divisions, into separate LLCs as we are scaling and growing. And so I have 30 people on my staff at this point,
Mhm.
and uh, it is not uncommon for me to come into the office and have the sky falling, or at least all my chicken little sing that the sky is falling. Uh, the sky was literally falling today. It's snowing right now.
Mhm.
But uh, I'm scaling out this online workshop, the Blackwell workshop. That's a 7-week online workshop, and I'm working with marketing folks to scale that. I've got a social media coordinator who's telling me, I show up and she says, do this, do this, do this. And I say, okay. And then I have to go shoot a video, or I have to do this or that. And so my schedule is crammed. And the past 2 weeks have been crazy. So when I have a interview or a podcast, I'm right now on about 2 podcasts a week.
Okay.
So I protect my time by giving myself about an hour to go in and figure out what it is we're talking about and how can I bring value to you
Mhm.
since we're spending this time together.
Okay.
You get two commodities in life, man. You get time, you got money. Got the rest of your life to make more money, but you can never make more time.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very passionate about honoring other people's time and making sure that I respect my time and protect my time.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do my best, but sometimes it's I, I think the worst feeling is missing an appointment. Especially if I'm tracking it and I know it's coming up and I put it in my calendar wrong. That's like the worst feeling ever. It's just like, oh, yeah, today I had a dental appointment and I put it in for half an hour later than I thought it was. I had to reschedule it. Um, but yeah, whenever I have an appointment, like a podcast meeting, I'm constantly like the day of, maybe even like the day before, I'm like constantly verifying, like looking at the communication, like looking at my calendar, like, okay, put it in my calendar correctly, right? Right, Michael? Yeah, okay, it's good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the worst, is wasting other people's time. So yeah, thank you for your preparation. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you own two commercial buildings. Two of them are mixed use,
Yep.
and you also own two, oh, so sorry, it's two commercial mixed use buildings, two 12-unit apartment buildings,
That's correct.
and 25 rental apartments, and about 16K square feet of office.
That's right.
Which of those are you most proud of? And maybe it might be a different answer, but which of those is the best performing for you?
That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
And my or my answer has to be a little selfish as
Mm,
well, because anybody who's listening to me for advice, I'm going to have to say, don't do it the way I've done it, because the way I did it was the way I had to do it to
mm.
do what I've done.
Okay.
That's a really complicated way to say, let me explain. 2013, I had retooled my business model to start analyzing properties based on the cash flow, the appreciation, depreciation, and debt reduction. And numbers, we first look at cash flow. And a lot of the properties we were looking at back then were like 10 to 12% positive cash flow. I mean, it was easy to find properties that made sense between 2011 and 2015. It was just easy. You had to try to lose money in real estate if you were going to do it. Well, in 2013, I came across this building in Tacoma, Washington. It was an 1890 mansion, and it had been converted in the 1920s into a shared office building. And then it had been changed hands in the late 70s and completely renovated in the 1980s. And the gentleman who owned it thought that he would own it forever. There was an apartment on the top floor, a 2,000 square foot apartment, and then there were 8 offices throughout the building. I thought it was cool. I went and looked at it. He listed it for sale. And that's a cool building. And it made 8.5% cash on cash based on the numbers that I was looking at. The numbers worked. And I went out and I showed it to a bunch of my clients, and nobody bit. Nobody was like, yeah, I need to buy that. So it got put on the back burner, like so many great ideas. And in 2015, in September of 2015, I had one of those days at work. I was working at another brokerage at the time. And it was actually before that, it was like July. And I'd helped a client with a really big deal that took a lot of work. And um, it was a foreclosure deal that I helped him buy, and it was a huge win for everybody except for the person who got foreclosed on. And the brokerage I was working at screwed up on the payment of my commission check, and they put a 2-week hold on the payment of my commission uh, because my client had paid me with a personal check, which really ruffled my feathers, because that was just one of those paychecks that from time to time you just really need.
Mhm.
And I was frustrated. I went home and I said to my wife, I said, you know what, Pam, I'm done. I'm done working for other people. I think this is our sign that we should just open our own shop. And who knows, maybe we'll go down to Tacoma and buy that Blackwell building that we saw down in Tacoma and open Blackwell Real Estate. And my wife looked at me and she said, she usually talks me out of my stupid ideas. And she looked at me and she said, Robert, I think that's a great idea. And so the building was no longer listed for sale. But I looked up the owner's information. I called them up and I said, hey, I'm a real estate guy. I met you a couple of years ago. I'm interested in buying your building, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't remember me, but we did talk. and he did agree to sell me the building. And he actually sold it to me on seller finance terms. The building basically broke even, and I had to bleed to keep it alive. The reason I bought the building is because I needed a base of operations. I needed a place to plant and grow my company. And we grew the company from 2015 to 2018. And then in 2018, I changed my business model, where instead of it being Robert running his own business and selling everything and having assistants working for him, I started hiring in agents to run my business model. I opened my playbook and I said, this is how I did it. I want you to go do the same. And the company just blew up. I mean, just, and so I bought the Blackwell building because I needed a place to plant my company. In 2019, we'd outgrown the Blackwell building. And so I needed to grow, and I bought this building that we're currently in here. And so that's how I ended up with the second building. And so now I've got 16,000 square feet of office space, most of which was cleared out thanks to COVID, which means that right here, right now, I have a lot of empty offices because my tenants were all small business operators who got their clocks cleaned in COVID. They couldn't come into work. They didn't have people coming in to see them. And because of that, I would be hard pressed and I'd be lying if I said, go out and buy an office building right now. But back to the model. What is my goal? My goal is, when I started the company, I wanted to make $20,000 a month in passive income. Okay. I hit that pretty quick because I had rental income, and then I had property management income, and I had real estate brokerage income, and everything was working. So then my lifestyle grew a little bit and my number doubled. My goal was 40,000 a month. Once fully stabilized, this building that I'm in here alone will produce $40,000 a month in income for my portfolio. Along the way, I picked up two 12-unit apartment buildings. They are my most solid producers right now because our business model focuses on entry-level housing. I have not bought additional rental units over the past 2 years. That's not true. Over the past year, the majority of my income, my extra income, has gone into growing my business. But I do also own $6.8 million worth of real estate, including I own my house outright. So I'm doing okay there. As we grow into other markets, I am putting up my radar now, and I'm looking at buying in other markets because I want to own properties now in a more diversified fashion. So we're looking at Boise right now. We're probably going to buy something in Dallas, Fort Worth. We are actively investing. We do private capital. And so we just funded a loan in Arlington, Texas, which is right by Dallas. We're putting about $700,000 into 3 other properties in Texas right now. We're planting an office in Idaho. We're looking at Florida. So now I'm looking at expanding my portfolio into other markets, and I'll probably start buying in other markets to spread the risk a little bit.
Okay.
That was a long answer.
No, it's a good answer. We like the long ones here.
Yeah.
Long ones are always good, full of details. I had a question about your career, but you covered that pretty extensively. Really impressed with your answer there. Um, how was the local government, Washington State, how was the local government working with owners and renters during the COVID-19 pandemic?
They're not.
They're not. You mentioned
Washington
that.
State is hostile towards small landlords, and one of our biggest challenges right now is calming down our owners, because if you have a tenant in default right now, there's almost no way that you can kick them out. And we have an incompetent governor who is hostile towards small businesses in general. So I'm not a fan of Jay Inslee. I don't think that he should be in office. I don't think he's doing anything good for the state. And he is actually the main reason that I'm looking at expanding my business into multiple states. I love Washington. I love being here. I've made a fortune here. I've made a lot of money here. But I'm also not going to keep all my eggs in one basket.
Right.
So I'm asked this question pretty much at least every week. Okay, Michael, and when we look at where we're at, we manage 235 doors right now. Our PM company, we are scaling up. We should get between 350 and 500 total doors under management this year. with what we're doing. And our defaults are pretty low. We're up 4% from where we were pre-COVID, before all these moratoriums set in. And it's because we're really good at communicating with our tenants. We're really good at maintaining levels of communication. And if people get into trouble, if they understand that you're not just some big bad landlord who's out there to try to take as much money from them as you can, but you're actually there to make sure that they have quality, safe housing, they'll talk to you. And yes, we have two egregious deadbeats that owe over $20,000 in back rent at this point each. And they are completely working the system. We have a handful of folks that fell on hard times and just can't make ends meet. We have most of our tenants. We do a pretty good job of underwriting our tenants when we screen to move people in. We have never had to evict a tenant that we have placed.
Okay.
We've had to evict tenants that we inherited, but we've never had to evict a tenant that we placed in the time that Blackwell's been around. And so we've done pretty well at maintaining our tenant population and our rents, but we're also plugged into several different landlord groups that are just, they're tearing their hair out right now, trying to figure out. I know folks that have over 9% delinquencies right now, and that's just, so for me, I will say that I'm not a fan of the current political environment. I see municipalities compounding the problem and making it worse. And they're saying that they don't want to just pull the moratoriums because there'll be a whole wave of evictions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's clear evidence that the politicians have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, because landlords don't want to go through a huge wave of evictions,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want stability. We want financial stability. We want our tenants to know that they need to pay their rent, because we have to pay mortgages, right? We have to pay for maintenance. We have to pay, we got a phone call this morning. We have a tenant who called us up. He said, my ceiling is leaking a lot. And we said, okay. And we sent our handyman down there, and the tenant upstairs fell asleep while filling her bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second time that's happened.
To that tenant?
To that tenant.
Oh.
Okay. So there are some moving parts there. Let's talk about being a landlord for a moment. I've got an upstairs tenant who is not great about being responsible. I have a downstairs tenant who twice now has had water damage in his unit. I'm also a landlord. I'm actually the property manager. I don't own the property. So I've got an owner, I've got the property manager, I've got the downstairs tenant, I've got the upstairs tenant, and I have a fiduciary responsibility. I'm the property manager. I have to fix this now. Mm-hmm. This costs money. We're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 in the next 24 to 48 hours to remediate this problem. Okay. And let's say the upstairs tenant doesn't have renter's insurance, which we require. The downstairs tenant does have insurance. In fact, the first time it happened, he upped his renter's insurance to make sure he had enough insurance. Okay, that's all right and good. But what happens when you have tenants who aren't as responsible? Mm. And then they say, well, I don't have money to pay my rent because I know I got that extra $600 a week for a while there, but I had to buy this TV, and the new iPhone came out, and I'm like, come on, man. So the practical application of this is, I don't see a huge wave of evictions coming through. I think that's a scare tactic. Mm-hmm. Because politicians want votes, and they want control, and they want power, and they want to give everybody free money. And that's what they're saying is, if you don't lift this moratorium, or if you don't leave this moratorium in place, then everyone's going to get evicted, and the whole world's going to collapse, and no one's going to be able to live anywhere, and everyone's going to be homeless. That's not true. It's a business. The whole thing is business, and it comes down to dollars and cents. So unfortunately, I don't see a clear resolution, because I don't see politicians who actually want to solve the problem. Right now, they just want to keep prolonging this thing because it's allowing them to pump more money into the economy, and I don't see good things coming out of that. So we're gonna spread our chips out a little bit on the table, and right now we're doing pretty well. We actually weathered COVID pretty well. Our company grew over the past year, and I don't know very many people that could say that. But at the same time, I do not trust the business environment long-term in Washington State.
Uh, Okay. As future syndicators, my team and I, we were planning on Washington State. Do you have any advice uh, for our first acquisition if we still are thinking about Washington State?
I would be cautious about syndication.
Okay.
Here's why. In a syndication, typically a syndication, and I don't know what your model is, Michael, so I'm not digging on your model, but syndicators typically are going to get into a model where whoever is offering the syndication or whoever's going to manage the syndication brings the deal to the table. You have passive investors who put money in, and the goal is to build up the value of a property either through market stabilization, upgrades, whatever. We're just riding out an appreciation cycle. And then typically the syndication is liquidated and everybody gets their pro rata share. I have seen that work. I've seen it work a couple of times in my 20 years in this business. I have seen it not work many, many more times. And I've seen folks really get their clocks cleaned. That's kind of my theme today. People losing money, getting their clocks cleaned. More, I've seen the person who was running the syndication wind up in a place where they were taking a tremendous amount of heat and or legal pressure from the investors in the syndication. So I'm not saying that I've never raised money from other people. I have this building, I technically syndicated. I syndicated 25% of it, but when I syndicated it, it was a de facto loan, right? I said, you bring in X amount of money, I'm going to run the show. It's my building, my name's on title. I run everything. And after 3 to 5 years, you're going to get paid back this amount, or we'll sell the building and you'll get your pro rata share. Mm-hmm. And so my encouragement to you would be not to necessarily avoid Washington State, but anywhere where you're looking at doing, get into a deal that you can manage on your own and or bring in OPM if you need to use other people's money. Mm-hmm. But use it in such a way that it's your show and you don't have to walk on eggshells around your other investors if things don't work out exactly the way you anticipate. When I bought this building for $2.9 million, and my anticipation was it would take me 6 to 9 months to lease it up. At that point, it would be worth about 4.8, just based on a 5.5 to 6 cap. And then my plan was then to increase rents, and I believe this building should be doing 30 to 40 grand a month at market rates, which would give me about a $6 to $7 million building based on cap rates, right? And that's a whole different discussion. Then COVID happened. And not only this building, but my other building where I had tenants cleared out. Well, because it's my show, as long as I'm able to make my debt payments, which I am, I'm okay. But if I had investors that were in this building that were coming to me saying, in your prospectus, you said that we were going to be stabilized at 9 to 12 months, and here we are a year later and the building's empty. What the hell, Robert? I don't want that pressure at this point in my life. I want to make my money. I want to have that money hit my bank account each month. And you probably have bigger ambitions than I do, right? I'm completely content with my lifestyle right now. I make enough money to do what I want to do. My wife and I travel. We went to Paris a couple of years ago for our 10th anniversary. I took my kids to Hawaii about a year and a half ago. We've got the lifestyle that I want. I've got the car I want. I own my house outright. I've got that lifestyle. And so I don't need to try to shoot the moon. There are several folks who want more than I've got, and I'm okay with that. That hustle is what makes America great, right? But I'll tell you that I don't think you need to take that much risk. I mean, even a lot of folks follow Grant Cardone. I like Grant. I like Grant's teachings. I buy his books by the case, and I have my folks read them. His Cardone Capital got in trouble. Last year, we went to 10X Growth Con. He was talking about how he was syndicating buildings in private placements, and he was going out and buying $80 million apartment buildings in key locations. And his big thing was, we've never missed a payment. We've never missed a payment. We've never missed a payment. Well, guess what happened in March, April of this year?
missed.
They withheld payments.
Ah,
You only get to do that once. And then the internet torched Grant Cardone and Cardone Capital.
hmm,
He's a sharp guy, right? But if you're not in control, and if you are, if you have to answer to your syndications, to your partners, it makes it harder to sleep at night. So for me, I would just caution you as you're looking at building your portfolio. I would say you could probably build yourself a 10, 20, 30 grand a month portfolio pretty easily on your own
hmm.
without the risk of having other investors in there. One man's
Okay.
opinion.
Okay. That makes sense. We'll consider that. I actually have to call, got a text. I'm going to call our partners, do a little group call in maybe 20 minutes or so. I
Okay.
got two more questions for you. Do you have time for two more questions?
I'm good.
All right. Where can, I'm not sure how to phrase this. I know what I want to say, but you have something going on in your life, either a project or a new business. How can my readers, my listeners, my viewers get a hold of you to help you with what you've got going on right now?
Right now, my focus in life is on the Blackwell Workshop, and we've got information on that at blackwellworkshop.com. If
Okay.
somebody wanted to communicate with me directly, the easiest way to get in touch with me is to hit my calendar for a 15-minute call. You go to robertscalendar.com and you can block out a time for a call there. It'd be really nice if you put in the comments there what you want to talk about, and I'm happy to have a chat. Um, Beyond that, it's hard to get me on email. It's hard to get me on the phone right now, just because my days typically start around 5:30 in the morning, and I'm usually home around 6:30 at night. After which time I do protect that time with my family, so it has to be scheduled.
Got it. Okay. Blackwell Workshop. We'll put that in the comments and or in the description. And Robert's calendar. Is that the same Calendly invite that I was able to
No,
use
I
to get a
sent
hold of
you a
you?
top secret one that gave you a little bit more time. Uh,
Okay, I won't worry about that.
yeah, if somebody just
I
hit
won't mention it.
robertscalendar.com. There's a thing to click for it's 15 minutes right now. By the time your caller or your listeners get there, it might be 10 minutes, just because these get stacked up.
Gotcha. Okay. And then last question is, what is your superpower?
My superpower.
Hmm.
Michael, I'm a survivor.
Hmm.
I am hard to crush and kill. When everything went sideways in 2008, many folks filed for bankruptcy. I had a $3.5 million portfolio that went sideways. That was a lot of money back then. Uh, I'm a survivor. I'm good at, my friend Brad says, I'm good at spinning the Rubik's Cube to figure out how to make things work. I don't know how to do a Rubik's Cube quickly, but I'm going to keep spinning it until I figure out how to get the solution I'm looking for. And my friend Dan says very effectively, money is not my God and never will be. I'm not chasing the money. I'm chasing excellence. I want to impact lives. I want to be significant. And when I die, I want to look back on my life and say, yeah, I made an impact on the world and left it better than I was here. And so when you have a bad day at work, or when things don't go the way you want, it's easy to get beat up, especially as an entrepreneur, right? And every day right now is a full contact sport. The past 2 weeks were rough. I had a business deal, a business relationship that went sideways bad a week and a half ago. Uh, I had a I have a piece of property in Dallas that I'm working on buying right now, that things have gotten a little complicated with the seller. We got resolution on that today. I'm tenacious, and I'm not willing to let the hits that come at me stop me. If I'm not able to deflect a hit, if I take it, I get checked just like everybody, right? Everybody gets checked into the glass once in a while. But I get up and I figure out how to keep moving forward. I know why I'm doing this. I know what my goals are. And it's not just to chase dollars, right? Money is a fleeting mistress, and it just, bye, it'll come, it'll go. But the legacy piece is where my focus is on. So I want to impact people's lives, and I'm not going to get there by letting every hit slow me down or make me think, whoa, life is hard. I'm a survivor, man. That's what I do.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds like you're in the military. Are you sure you're not in the military?
My parents were not fans of the military, so they told me that they didn't want me to join. I almost joined the Marines once. I almost joined the Army once, and I never went in because I didn't have the family support there. Um, my boy, if well, even my girls, I guess, if they wanted to go military, they would have our support. Um, I personally think that folks should get experiences like that. I am an Eagle Scout, and you got to get out and see that the world is really, really big. And most of us try to live in our little world that I don't have my cell phone right here, but most people's worlds are just on their little cell phones now.
Mhm.
And you, I mean, you've seen more of the world, although you've been underwater for most of it, right?
They
My
come up sometimes.
my brother-in-law was a nuke, right?
Mm.
And so he was out of Bremerton. He was in Hawaii for a while. We could talk about that offline at some point.
Mm.
Uh, one of my best friends went into the Marines and he saw the world. He was in the sandbox. He was over here. He was in Europe, and and he came home and he was just a different person in all kinds of good ways because he saw the world was so big. And I think that people need that experience. They need to realize that the garbage we hear on the news and on TV and on your little bubble that you build, the world's a lot bigger than that. Get out and see it and experience it. So no, I'm not military. I kind of wish I was, but at this point, I'm 41 years old and I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. I am who I've always wanted to be. So I just you got to figure out who you want to be and become that person. And that's what I'm doing.
Gotcha. Awesome, Robert. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you inviting me on to chat.